Okay, it's another one of these guys. It's a 25. That means Bernard-jou Iwaku. Never heard of it. I feel like I know enough about books to understand this show, but I'm not enough of a reader to find it hilarious, if anyone would find this hilarious. I mean, it's mostly just references either to books or to, like, the culture of consuming things, a lot of which applies to a lot more than just books. And while the show seems extremely well read, it makes lots and lots of references to lots of things that I'm like, wow, a reference to that. But then it's there's no joke. It's just like a bunch of references to things and to cultural sort of ideas. I wish the camera would decide to focus on me and not on my fucking clothes hamper, which I don't even know why it's there. Anyway, yeah, it's not really funny. It's just a string of references. I mean, as entertaining it is to be watching a show with a reference to Sturgeon's Law and then someone beating someone up over having referenced Sturgeon's Law for some reason, I'm like, oh, that's a thing I know, but, you know, that's about it. So, I don't know. It's not funny, so I'll just quit after 2 episodes. Alright, continuing. 4, that's Shumatsu no Izetta. Kind of curious about this one. I've heard comments going in a lot of different directions about this one, so we'll see what happens. I just got done marathoning all 12 episodes of Izetta the Last Witch, and it was a good time. It was a fun show. I enjoyed it. It was exactly the kind of show I really wanted right now, because so far this year, I felt like all that I've been... Some app just popped up for a second and distracted the shit out of me. All year, like, all I've been watching, like, to completion is, like, comedies and slice of life shows, like, stuff that's sort of passive and easy to watch, and, like, there hasn't been a lot of great action stuff. Like, Cabanera, the Iron Fortress was good. You know, it was a little uneven in the later half, but I enjoyed the show, but there hasn't been a lot of just, like, simple, fun, watch an action show and it's cool kind of stuff this year. A lot of the action stuff has been like weird and convoluted or just boring and lame and shitty in some way or another. This show was fine. There was no huge glaring issues with it. Very well paced. It always had consistently felt like something was happening. You know, there was like little twists and turns in the story. I thought it was really clever how this show lets the main characters win very consistently all the way up until, like, the major turning point in the story. Like, it was interesting how it kept suggesting that the bad guys were ahead of the curve. Like, it would always kind of... Like, an episode would end, like, the good guys would have a victory, and then the end of the episode would be like, oh, but the bad guys were planning on that, and they've got something else up their sleeve. So in the next episode, you're like, oh, shit, is it gonna happen? Are the bad guys gonna start turning the tide? But then it would turn out the good guys had something else up their sleeve, and then they'd be like, ha-ha, we beat you. And you're like, well, shit, these guys are just winning all the time. They're just cleaning up. They're cleaning house with these bad guys. And then it finally, you know, you're waiting for the turn and it finally happens and boom, good guys just get fucked all at once, you know. And then there's like a turnaround. I'm spoiling the shit out of this show, I'm realizing. Spoilers for this show. I'm sorry. I'm going to put a spoiler warning on screen just because I feel like I'm basically recommending this show and then immediately spoiling the entire dramatic arc of it. But I thought that was interesting that it sort of follows that formula and, like, you know, it kind of kept me on my toes a little bit and... You know, the action's not great. I would say the weakest aspect of the show is when it tries to, like, just depict war, because it's, you know, it's pretty cheesy. It's like witches flying around, fucking throwing lances at tanks and stuff, and, like, the action scenes are fun when they're just being creative. Like, the ones in the first episode when the witch is, like, biting her finger and throwing blood on the ground, and it's shooting ice spikes into jets, that's awesome looking, but, like, you know, once you've seen it a few times, it's like, alright, I get the point. We don't gotta, like, show whole battle scenes. Really, the worst example is episode 3, where, like, most of the episode is a big war scene, and it was kind of tiring. But, like, for the most part, it was fun to watch. The characters are all good, you know. There's only a few moments that really strain the suspension of disbelief. And I will say, this show, you know, it hangs on by threads in terms of making sense. Like, there's plenty of stuff that's questionable. The biggest one is cloning. That was, like, really? The show is set... It's an alternate universe World War II story that has witches and magic, but there's, you know, very strict rules on the witches and magic, so, you know, and that's established from early on, so you kind of get it. It's like, okay, it's World War II, you know, but it's got witches. But then, all of a sudden, oh yeah, also, the Germans have cloning technology. That's just a thing they have. You know, it's the 40s, and they can make a full fucking clone. I don't even think we can do that now. Can we just clone people? Like, advanced aging, like they just cloned, they're like clones that go straight to adulthood kind of thing, you know, like, and also being a clone, makes the enemy witch unstable because she's a clone. I don't know why. That's not justified at all. So, you know, there's some stupid shit. The guy, the bad guy who's like the schemer, who's there for like the whole show, he's the one like plotting everything out, and, you know, he's like the intelligent guy. Towards the end of the show, like, because he's made such great progress, the king of the Germania Empire just like decides to like off him. He's like, you've done amazing work. I'm promoting you. Now I'm gonna put you in a platoon far away, and, you know, and then assassins come after him, and he turncoats and goes to the other side. And I couldn't help but think, is it really like, okay, I get that the king is like kind of paranoid or whatever, though they don't really present him that way. I don't get why he would just decide to kill this guy who's done nothing but good work. Like, it's not like this guy is really gunning for the throne or anything. He seems like he's just a really helpful person to have around, and the king's like, I'm gonna kill him. And of course this means he turncoats and therefore gives all the information to the good guys that they need to win. So yeah, that's another thing. I don't know if it's justified. So it's not like this is perfect. There are, you know, there are threads in there, but dramatically the show all works. It all makes sense in terms of like the characters and their motivations and the dramatic stakes of the conflict. It all feels right, you know? Now, mind you, it's pretty standard. It follows the rules pretty closely. And for a war story, it's very black and white and cut and dry. The good guys are all extremely nice people. Like, their whole country is just the nicest people in the world. And the bad guys, their whole country is mustache-twirling villains. You know, like, there's a pretty fucking clear good and bad guy in this show, which, for a war story, is a little much. But I really like that while this show is very fun, it's never dark. It never gets into the realm of grimdark. It never gets into the realm of just being, like, overly violent and dark. But it has a lot of bite to it. You know, it is war. People die. Lots of people die. You know, people get shot in an abrupt way. And it's not overly sentimental or melodramatic about it either. Like, I would really have hated it if every time a character died, there was like a huge, sweeping, orchestral song while someone cradles them in their arms. There's not a lot of that. You know, it's mostly just, it's very abrupt and sudden, but it's not like grimdark and uber violent or anything. The show is always sort of brisk and fun, and there's only one scene that's like particularly holy shit, and it's great because it happens right at the end of the show. Like episode 11, there's a part where, you know, the bad guys are about to capture the princess, and they're trying to lure her out, and the bad guy just like grabs one of her soldiers and is like, hey, you should come out. Boom, and just caps one of them right in the head. Brings over another one. Hey, you coming out? Boom, shoots another one. You know, like, it's not like him threatening to do it. He just starts shooting guys. And it's like, holy shit, he's really fucking shooting these guys. That was a great scene, you know, ramped up the tension and really made it feel like, man, they're so fucked. They're just fucked. You know, so the show's good at that. It's good at managing the viewer's emotions, having the right ebb and flow. There's lots of good dialogue in the show, just like great little one-liners. Characters just say the right thing at the right moment. All the characters are very likable. I talked about this when I talked about Shirayuki Hime, that I tend to fall for shows where all of the characters are extremely self-sacrificing good people who just want what's best for everybody else. Like, all the main characters, like, are practically fighting with one another over who can be the most self-sacrificing. It's easy to fall for characters like that, who are just all good guys and all want the best for one another. And their conflicts come from the fact that, one of them, they're both trying to sacrifice themselves for the other. So it's like, if either one of them does anything, it hurts the other, but would also hurt them if they couldn't do it. You know what I mean? So I just like that kind of character dynamic. Now again, I know it sounds, because I'm excitedly explaining this, it might sound like I'm really lavishing high praise onto this show. It's nothing amazing, but it has a lot of energy and heart to it. And I was interested to find that, the staff on the show was interesting to me, because, the studio that makes it, it seems like they've been around forever, but never really done a lot of TV anime. They did, the second season of Victorian romance Emma in 2005, and that's the last TV show they did. They've mostly done movies and OVAs and stuff like that. And the director, the studio and director had both done You Are Umaso, that movie, which is a kid's movie about a dinosaur. And none of them have done anything like this before. So it was really interesting that this is like a studio and director who's never really done this kind of TV anime, and I thought the direction was really strong. The pacing of images and the cinematography is strong. There's lots of really good shots. I would say that the design sense is not that strong. The character designs are okay. The animation direction is a little wonky. The animation, there's never any really amazing moments, and there's a few weird and janky moments, and there's a few moments where an attempt at looking really amazing just kind of comes off as amateurish. But and the whole color scheme of the show is kind of flat. It's very bright all the time. There's not a lot of tone changes or anything with the artwork, and the backgrounds are just serviceable. The overall art design of the show is not that strong, but the direction and shot composition is pretty strong a lot of the time, and it has a good pacing of images to it. So I think overall the visuals are okay. They're good enough. The music is really strong, and it's a first-time composer, at least a first-time anime composer, who definitely is pulling from the playbook of Yoko Kanno and Yuki Kajiura and doing some really experimental sounding songs and lots of chorus vocals and stuff, which is great. Brings a lot of scenes to life. Those are two of my favorite composers, so it's definitely a happy comparison. So to me, this show felt ambitious. It's a bunch of people who haven't really done this kind of show going all out on it and really trying to make just a fucking solidly written action show. The opposite of what I was talking about with that Matoi show, where I was saying, how does a show like this get off the ground? This is the kind of show, Izetta's the kind of show I'm surprised there's not always a show like this. I'm really shocked that every season we don't have just a solid action show that just follows the rules and is just a well-written show, just delivers on dramatic moments and has a satisfying payoff, a nice big final battle, build up with all the characters. You kind of care about what's happening. It's not a very memorable show, but at least it's good popcorn entertainment. It kept me entertained for 4 hours. I just sat there, watched the show, had a good time. I might not remember it in a few weeks, but at least I was able to watch the whole thing and not feel dizzyingly confused at any point or just wondering what the fuck the point of this is. It was fine. It's a good, solid action show. I give it a 7 out of 10. So, yeah. And it didn't, I mean, it didn't have as many highs as Cabaneri, but it also didn't go as low as that show. So, I think I'd say I like Cabaneri more just because I can more easily see myself watching at least the first half like over and over again because the action is so fucking strong and the artwork is so fucking strong. But you know, it's in the same league, so I'd say it's a worthwhile, it's a good time. Okay, feeling fresh for 2017. Let's go. It's a 22. That's Classicaloid. I've heard this is shit, so we'll see what happens. Well, I will say that Classicaloid was not what I was expecting. I was expecting like a 5-minute meme show, but it's actually a full-length meme show. It's about, you know, classical music composers, but they're memes in the current day. They're people who live now. It's fucking dumb. Oddly enough, the worst thing about this show to me was the music. Because it's about classical composers and it uses classical music, and like the opening scene uses, you know, the classic Beethoven symphonies in the usual comedic way that they're used. But then the opening song and the song that plays in like a big moment when Beethoven I guess makes reality weird using his power of music or whatever, is like a rock version of the symphonies using, you know, like guitar driven lead thing. But it sounds like shit because it's all synth. It's like it's like synth rock music. Like, you know, the drums are obviously sequenced. The guitars just sound like okay, I have a real problem with like when people try to do like metal covers of different songs, and it's always just like a guy with a guitar on like the most basic settings, like just a metal preset or whatever, playing the melody line over what is clearly synthesized bass and drums and everything else, you know? And they just sound like really flimsy and cheap, which is the opposite of how symphonic music is supposed to sound. I think part of what makes symphonic music sound so grandiose is that it's all these fucking real instruments, this huge army of real instruments blasting you with sound. And to reduce that to like 4 or 5 layers of cheap sounding synth, it just, you know, the power of classical music is certainly not there, not felt in this show. Not that I even care about classical music in the first place. I'm not a fan of the genre, but yeah, it's a dumb meme show that seemed pretty cheaply made. All right, what'll it be? Number 7. That's Nanbaka. I don't know shit about this show, so let's give it a go. It's like a childish slapstick comedy about 4 over-designed pretty boys trying to escape from prison. Really dumb. And as I was watching this, I couldn't help but think of how pissed off I am that there are people who accuse Yuri on Ice of being like Fujoshi bait or whatever, when it's just a perfectly fine, good show that happens to be about pretty boys instead of pretty girls for once. This is what Fujoshi bait looks like, where there's like no substance whatsoever to the show, other than that there's 4 pretty boys in it, which is like what the unfortunate majority of Fujo bait shows are, and why we could use a lot more shows like Yuri on Ice to make it, you know, to make there be less fucking lazy bullshit like this coming out. Okay, we're making good progress here. 26. That is Tiger Mask W. Alright, I've heard good things about this. Let's check it out. Well, I watched like an episode and a half of Tiger Mask W, and it seems like a fine enough show. I don't have any big problems with it. It's just kind of dry and basic and slow for my taste. Feels very old school. Granted, it is a reboot of a very old franchise from like the 70s. And, I mean, I wanted to watch it partly because it's about wrestling, and I'm kind of interested in wrestling these days, though I've never gotten that into it. But it's weird with anime because in anime, wrestling is always real. Like, all the kayfabe is completely real. And to me, a lot of the intrigue of wrestling is the fact that it's not real. The like, seeing the differences between who the real people are and who their characters are and how they portray this unreal cartoon fantasy. Whereas when it's in anime form and the kayfabe is completely real, it's just a story. It's just any other story. And the story in this one is pretty simplistic and straightforward and not terribly engaging, at least so far. And just the overall look and the feel of the show is very, like, you know, it's a Toei animation show. It feels like one. It's very much that, like, just kind of slow moving, not much of excitement going on. I know there are some little Sakuga cuts in there here and there, but, like, overall the show just feels kind of dry. So yeah, I don't see myself going any farther in it if it seems like your kind of thing. If you ever wanted to watch a wrestling anime or you like classic 70s stuff, it's worth a shot. I know a lot of people like it, but yeah, it's just not my cup of tea. Okay. Show me big money. Number 4. Watashi ga motete do sunda. I don't even know what that is. Wait, that's not number 4. That's just the 4th in my list. I've already seen number 4. I gotta fix all these fucking numbers. Number 32. That's the last one. Hagane Orchestra. I have no idea what that's gonna be either. Well, oddly enough, I ended up watching all of Hagane Orchestra. Not really because it was particularly good. I mean, it wasn't bad. But more because I was, like, just marveling at its very existence. It's a series of 4-minute episodes that is just an advertisement for a mobile game. And the plot of the show is that it's these 4 girls who I guess are NPCs from the game discussing how to advertise the game. The whole show is just about advertising this mobile game, which the show itself has very little to do with other than that they're trying to advertise it. It seems like the game is just like a customizing robots. Like you get robot parts and put them together, and then I think maybe the pilots are cute girls or something. I really don't know. It wasn't presented in that much detail in the show. Most of it was just kind of self-aware comedy hijinks, and it wasn't that it was particularly funny or clever. The artwork was really good, though. Like, the character art was really solid, and it had this interesting use of colored lines where the lines change color across, like it'll be black and then red and then blue, and it looked really trippy, and, like, they definitely tried to capture the look of the illustrated art in the game, which is rare in anime for them to, like, capture that kind of, like, overly colorful look in the anime character designs. I guess because they knew they didn't have to move that much, they thought they could get away with it. Even though there is actually, a fair deal of animation in this show, which was surprising that they, animated the characters with that much differences in color all over them. It was probably difficult to even make them move slightly. But yeah, overall it was fairly entertaining. There were a few little fun, meta gags. There's one episode where these 2 girls show up who are both voiced by Vocaloids, it sounded like, or like some kind of voice, like some kind of computerized voice. And I guess these 2 characters are important to the game, but they hadn't shown up in the show until, like, very late in. And there's just a whole episode about these 2 girls walking around, and they're animated just like normal anime characters. They just happen to have these weird Vocaloid voices, and that was interesting. There's one episode where they go to a hot spring, and the joke is that there's, steam covering up all their naked bodies, but there's a download meter on the screen, and they're saying the more people download the game, the thinner the steam will become, and, like, as the scenario plays out, the meter goes up and down. I thought that was a fun concept. There's a lot of little fun concepts. None of it's that funny or that clever, and ultimately it's just an advertisement for a game. But the artwork was strong enough, and some of the jokes were interesting enough that I ended up watching all 12 episodes, which, only took, like, not even an hour, probably. So, yeah, it was an alright time. That's probably it for this episode of this show. I recorded the first 2 parts of this, like, back in December, and it's taken me this long to get enough footage to make a full fucking video out of this. But, yeah, we'll see you in the next one.